Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a stack of your sources and distill them into the knowledge you need fast. Today, we are deep diving into the world of Executive Protection EP, for short, right here in New York City. And we're asking a question that feels more relevant than ever. Is this kind of protection a luxury, for celebrities? Or has it become a flat-out necessity for business leaders and even families?
That's the mission today. And the sources, they really paint a picture of a world that has changed, dramatically. We dug into corporate risk analyses, state licensing rules, real-world incident reports, all to unpack who needs protection now, why the threats are starting online, and most importantly, how you vet a provider to make sure they're legit.
And the big nugget right out of the gate here is something anyone in corporate governance or finance needs to hear. The budget line for EP has, it's fundamentally shifted. It's not just another operational expense anymore sitting next to the electric bill.
Not at all. It's jumped straight into the risk management and corporate governance budgets.
Which means the board is looking at it.
Exactly. When something moves from operations to governance, it means the board is scrutinizing it. It means it's seen as critical for business continuity, for fiduciary duty. We're seeing mandates for chief security officers, for annual audits, all driven by the scale of the threats today.
It's amazing how a protection detail can be the line between a minor headache and a full-blown governance crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into what sparked all this, we want to mention the pros who navigate this city every day. This deep dive is brought to you by Stone Security Services. Operating in a city as amazing, but let's be honest, as complex as New York requires real expertise. Stone Security Services is recognized as the best security company in New York, offering everything from private security and bodyguards to full corporate security services. For discreet, personal, and professional protection, give Stone Security Services a call at 212-260-7444. Okay, so let's unpack this. The sources, they all seem to circle back to one specific devastating event, a real inflection point for the industry.
That's right. The incident that completely redefined corporate security was the fatal shooting of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, December 2024. It happened in broad daylight, right here in New York, and it forced every single company to rethink how they protect their leaders.
Because it proves something everyone feared but hadn't seen so clearly.
It proved, in the most tragic way, that all that anonymous online anger, all that vitriol, it translates directly into real-world physical violence.
Which brings us to this term we see everywhere now, the cyber-physical nexus.
Uh-huh.
What does that actually mean? How does it make an executive more vulnerable today than, say, 5 years ago?
It's the seamless and, frankly, terrifying way that digital information becomes a blueprint for a physical attack. Executives are just so visible now. You've got transparency rules, social media, even just, basic details of their lives are out there.
And that's the intelligence an attacker needs.
Precisely. We're seeing PII, personally identifiable information, things like home addresses, family phone numbers, their travel schedules. It's all being packaged and sold on the deep and dark web.
So an attacker can just buy a pre-made plan.
They can. They can orchestrate a confrontation at the point of maximum vulnerability.
But wait, if the target is the executive, isn't the company the real target? Isn't the risk still corporate?
That's the convergence. The end goal might be disrupting the company, but the vector of attack, the way in, is now deeply personal. Public backlash against a company over healthcare costs, energy policy, whatever, it now follows the CEO home. The threat doesn't stop at the company firewall.
So security used to be about the perimeter of the office building.
And now it's about the keywords being searched in underground forums. It's a total shift in where the threat originates.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. We're moving from the digital risk to the real world. Because we all picture EP as being for movie stars, right? But the sources show the client list in NYC is, it's way more diverse than that. Who is actually feeling the heat?
You really have to broaden that definition. A lot of the demand comes from people in very specific, sometimes temporary situations of danger. So first, think about asset handlers.
Okay, what does that mean?
These are people moving valuable things. It could be precious stones, gold, building blueprints, large sums of cash, even company secrets. The assets themselves create the risk, so they need an escort.
And then you have the really high-stakes personal stuff. The things driven by life, not work.
Absolutely. The sources show a huge use of EP for families in these acute private disputes. We're talking about victims of domestic violence, people in bitter divorce or custody battles, witnesses who have to testify in court, and a surprisingly common one, relatives of someone just arrested who are now facing revenge threats from a victim's family.
That's intense. You might need protection just because of who you're related to.
Exactly. The need is immediate and incredibly personal.
What about for events? New York is the city of events.
And events are huge risk multipliers, not just corporate events. Think about, say, a Sweet 16 for a wealthy family. The risk there is kidnapping for ransom or robbery.
Right.
Or red carpet events. The risk isn't just someone stealing a necklace. It's managing the paparazzi scrum. It's mitigating hostage threats when you have so many high net worth people packed together.
The logistics must be insane. I saw the sources mention multilingual security personnel.
Yes, that's a huge deal in New York. Security often has to be a cultural liaison, not just a physical barrier. Top-tier agencies have people who speak Cantonese, Hebrew, Russian, Spanish, Yiddish. I even saw American Sign Language listed.
Over 30 languages, I think it said.
It ensures the protection just blends in, especially for visiting foreign executives or dignitaries. It's about being discreet.
So what does this all mean for someone looking to hire protection? It's obviously less about muscle and more about information now. What are the core services that make up a modern program?
It really breaks down into 3 pillars, and the whole focus has shifted from being reactive to proactive. First, and this is the most important part, is intelligence. It all starts with ongoing, unique threat assessments for that specific person, and that's the job of the GSOC.
GSOC, Global Security Operations Center. We hear that acronym a lot. Why is that the real game changer?
Think of the GSOC as the brain of the whole operation. It's doing 24/7, 365 monitoring. A human guard can't watch Twitter, local news, the dark web, and specialized threat feeds all at once. It's impossible.
Right.
The GSOC uses AI and big data to filter all that noise. It looks for patterns, for early warning signs, like someone's PII being exploited or their travel plans getting mentioned online, long before a physical threat even takes shape.
So having that tech isn't a bonus. It's the minimum requirement for a serious firm.
It is. The second pillar is the physical measures. This is the more traditional stuff. The bodyguards, the home security systems, mail screening, evacuation plans. But within that, the most vulnerable phase is always transportation.
Why is that so risky in a city like New York?
Because movement creates predictability. It creates exposure. So secure transport uses highly trained security drivers, often retired or active law enforcement.
So it's not just a fancy black car service.
Not at all. You're paying for integrated security. The agents map primary and secondary routes. They identify emergency exits. They coordinate with airport services to minimize the time you're exposed at a choke point.
The level of detail is just incredible. And the third pillar, residential security, that has to be a tough balancing act, right? Making people feel safe without feeling like they're in a prison.
It requires a really delicate touch. For a high-rise apartment or a brownstone in Manhattan, security has to blend into the family's life. That means integrating tech-like video intercoms and keycards with personnel, but in a discreet way. I read a case study about an energy exec who was being targeted at home by activists. The solution wasn't a bunch of obvious armed guards. It was a technical plan that made the security almost invisible, which actually reduced the family's anxiety.
So protection has to adapt as fast as the threats do.
And that ability to adapt, that's what defines a high-quality service.
And speaking of that, let's circle back to our sponsor. Who gets how important that adaptability is in New York? Stone Security Services is skilled at adapting to new challenges as they arise. Their customers consistently leave 5-star reviews, highlighting their professionalism and attention to detail. Whether you need corporate security, security consultant services, or that discreet personal protection, Stone Security Services is ready. Call them at 212-260-7444. Okay, so if you're listening and thinking about vetting a provider, especially in a place like New York, what are the absolute non-negotiables? What are the red flags?
Well, the regulatory environment here is incredibly strict. The absolute baseline is that any firm has to be licensed by the NYS Department of State as a watch, guard, or patrol agency. That's step 1. But where the real vetting happens is with their liability insurance. This is the detail that protects you from your own security team's mistakes.
And what kind of risks does that insurance need to cover? Because this sounds like it's tied directly to the high-friction nature of New York you mentioned.
It is. New York is a high-friction city. You have constant run-ins with aggressive media, paparazzi, protesters. So the agency's insurance, which is often a minimum of $100,000 per occurrence, it has to explicitly cover the civil risks of that environment. false arrest, false imprisonment, malicious prosecution, libel, slander, and violation of privacy.
Wait, libel and slander. So the insurance protects you if your bodyguard gets into a shouting match with a reporter.
Exactly. The mandate acknowledges that agents will have these hostile encounters, and the agency, not the client, has to absorb that legal and financial risk.
So it's not enough to hire a firm that keeps you safe. You need one that's legally and financially sound enough to handle the fallout.
That's why the compliance check is crucial. Then you look at the agents themselves. They need deep local knowledge and strong soft skills discretion, diplomacy. For the top-tier roles, you're looking for former special operations forces or extensive corporate EP experience, and you look for certifications like the CPP, Certified Protection Professional. It's the industry gold standard.
That tells you you're hiring a security strategist, not just a guard. Okay, finally, the big question. Let's talk numbers. What kind of cost are we looking at?
It is extremely expensive. A long-term contract is more efficient, but the overhead is huge. If you need a comprehensive 204/7 contract, which means a rotating team of at least 6 people to cover everything, intelligence, transport, residential, the sources quote an absolute minimum of $250 per hour.
$250 an hour. That's
Yeah.
a staggering number. What drives that cost? It can't just be salary.
Not even close. That rate covers the massive overhead, the cost of that specialized liability insurance we just talked about, the subscription fees for the intelligence platforms and the GSOC, the continuous specialized training for the agents, the cost of leasing or maintaining armored vehicles. All that complexity is why the cost is what it is for that level of service.
And when you're paying that, trustworthiness is everything. Stone Security Services ensures that with elite close protection, armed bodyguards made up exclusively of retired and off-duty NYPD officers, detectives, and former secret agents. They're highly recommended by customers, with constant 5-star reviews for their execution. Contact them today at 212-260-7444. Okay, so we've covered a lot. The massive shift in risk after the Brian Thompson incident, proving digital threats become physical ones. We looked at the surprising range of people who need protection, from asset handlers to families, and we broke down the really high bar for professional standards here in New York.
The core takeaway is pretty clear. Executive protection isn't a perk anymore. It's a strategic necessity for duty of care, for business continuity. The mantra now is proactive security. You implement threat intelligence before there's an incident. And your due diligence has to focus on a vendor's intelligence and technical capabilities, not just their headcount.
So here's a final provocative thought for you to take away. While public officials here in New York are wrestling with these unclear policies about using NYPD details for personal security, high-profile private individuals have to ask a deeper question. Is my private security contract detailed enough, not just to protect me from harm, but to explicitly cover me from civil liabilities like libel and false arrest in the city? The need for a contract that spells out everything, even what happens to unspent retainer funds, it really reveals that modern security is, at the end of the day, a deeply complex legal and financial undertaking.